Welcome to Hate Clarity. I'm your host, Lindsay, and today we are opening the Akashic Records on Atlantis. The questions that we're going to ask are, what is Atlantis? Where did it exist and when? Who lived there? Describe it to us. Asking the Akashic Records to paint a picture of what it was like to be there. What can we learn from Atlantis? How did it all end? What messages do those from Atlantis have for us today? And what's the most important message we need to know about Atlantis? First question. What is Atlantis? They're saying discoveries. A discovery of a civilization underwater. What is Atlantis? They said fictional. A dream of what was, what could have been, possibilities of a future, of the future. A warning times. They're just saying Atlantis is discoveries. One more time, what is Atlantis? They're saying it's a fictional story. They're saying remnants of the sea, discarded, disregarded, like evidence. They're kind of saying fiction fantasies. A myth of creatures. And they just keep saying a warning of times. A warning of times ahead. A rush of waters. The flooding. And they're showing, like I'm looking at a wall, and then I'm seeing all these tiny little like sticky notes, but they're red, almost like a bunch of little red flags in the shape of a fish. Like the negative space is a fish, but around it are all these like teeny tiny like sticky notes, like red sticky notes, which feel like red flags. But they're saying that Atlantis is fictional. So the rest of these questions are going to be interesting. So where did it exist or when? And they're like, no, none, never mind. All right, so never mind those questions, right? So who lived there? It's all fictional. They're like fictitious, a pleasure of stories. But a warning of times, like the story, they're saying birthed, the stories of this place birthed from a place warning of times in the future. So it's like visions. They're like visions, visionaries, seers. We're seeing, they're saying like palaces and pillars. They were seeing these things underwater, civilizations underwater. And they wrote stories about them. And because there's something about belief systems, like not believing in foresight and not believing in future seeing, and those who like predict what's to come, there were people who like read these stories. And so when there was like evidence found underwater in the seas, that there was like, oh, is this Atlantis? Like, but they're like, oh, it's probably like wreckage from like, I don't know, they're kind of like shipping or things happening in the seas where the discoveries of like finding something like pillars made someone think like, oh, like how did this get here? Was this from like Atlantis? But they're like overseas. Like these are like overseas stories. So there were these stories, and then as people found objects in the water, there started to be this like belief system that they're saying a mistaken belief system that there was this, they're saying like highly advanced civilization that went underwater. They're like, not yet, not yet. It's like the seers were seeing a highly advanced civilization underwater. Okay, this might be extremely timely. They're like, bingo. The seers were seeing into the future, and they're like millennia into the future, seeing these advanced technologies, seeing this advanced society underwater, flooding waters, rushes of flooding waters, way back in the past. They're like a long time ago, and it was written down. And because people didn't believe that you could see into the future, they thought that maybe they were telling stories of the past. That's wild. Okay. I guess, I mean, maybe describe it to us, because this is all, it's fictional now. So describing Atlantis to us, they're like example, like a place like Rome. But they're like, the modern technology, modern times. These people, they're saying foreseeing the future. And these were all these like warnings about the future. What can we learn from Atlantis, from this story of Atlantis? What can we learn? They're just like, duh, flooding waters. Like, duh, flooding waters. They're like past to us. Future, present moment, future, close. Like this past vision of the civilization underwater, we are like reaching its present. We're getting closer. It's like past, present, future. And we're just like, right there. Like we've reached this future, the foresight of the past. And they're kind of like, you're looking it dead in the face. Like you guys are looking it dead in the face. But these were like predictions of the seers of the past, the psychics, the mystics of the past. Okay, so now it's like, how did it all end? I don't know. Do we want to see that? Because now that this is like our reality, how did it all end? How does it all end? Dare I ask? Okay, so if this is our reality, how does it all end? They're like, higher end. It's a higher end, higher ground. And they're showing, houses becoming underwater. They're showing things floating in water. They're showing a person kind of like up to their neck in water, like looking up to the sky, but like getting themselves out of the water to higher ground. And they're saying these wake up calls, flooding waters, rushing flooding waters, wake up calls, crawling out of the river, getting out of the river, seeking higher ground. They're saying the higher end of it. How does it all end? Rebuilding in different places. Finding a place to be in a higher end of it. I just keep saying higher end, higher end. It's a higher end. So it's like, they're saying like the adaptation and the motivation of people to survive things, rebuild, move, They're like mobilization, motivation. The story of Atlantis as the warning sign, and then the reality of our modern times. We've had this story as a warning of the times for a very long time, from a long time ago. And the importance of having this story come out. You know, whether people believed in it and imagined themselves there and believed they were from there or not, the fact that this story has carried through so many, they're saying centuries, like generations. People have written books, painted pictures, like it just, the story has passed down. This warning has passed down for such a long time. And now they're like, you know, we're here. We're here. But the how does it all end is I see us adapting and moving to higher ground, and using mobilization and motivation to, they just keep saying higher places, like to seek and find higher places. They're like higher elevation and like whatever that means to you. All of these questions change once it becomes totally fictional, right? So I'm going to ask it anyway, but like, what messages, not to those from Atlantis, have for us, but what is the most important message? You know, what is the message of Atlantis for us? Run away from the places underwater. You know, keep going. They're like, you know, to be scattered and like rebuilding in new places versus like continuing to build our structures, our foundations, our civilizations. They're like in the waters, in the previous waters, because it's like, they just keep showing this kind of pulse of water. It's like it fills up and then it goes down, and then it fills up a little more and then it goes down, and then it fills up more and it's just going to keep filling more, and then they're just like, eventually it's going to just break the dam and it's just going to be like a raging bull, they're saying, of water flow. So just the absolute importance of seeking new places and not to be underwater, whatever that means to you, wherever you are in the world. They're like water bodies. They're just like, they're filling up. They're filling up. They're like, they fill up, yeah, they dry out, yeah, like they do both. But when they fill up, it's interesting because it's this sense of like erosion and the filling up. They're kind of showing like all the soil and everything kind of becoming like mushy and open, and then when we have things like drought and it dries up, it's like all of the nutrients get washed away with the water. And so what's left is this very, they're kind of saying like empty, like lacking nutrient water. So then when it fills up again, it's like this, the soils that were kind of holding it in place, they become like dust. And then it's just like, they're like dust, like sand, like it's less and less constructed to be holding this body of water, these bodies of water. So they just keep filling up and pulsing. And then like, it just, like, they're kind of like, they're saying tend to the soil in such an extreme way, unless you rebuild soil structure in those areas in such a careful, meticulous, like expansive, vast way. And they're like, you can take that seriously, but they're showing dollar signs. Like, they're like, you'll get so caught up in the cost of it that you won't even do it. And so the reality is, if for those people who are going to do it, then they're just like, kind of like, you've got a chance. But if you do nothing to, they're kind of saying to like rebuild the quality of the soil to make it this like spongy, vibrant, they're almost saying like elastic, but like like just rebuilding the structure of the soil. When these bodies of water, these streams, these brooks, these rivers, these lakes, like whenever it just has this kind of expansion and contraction, it's just like they're just showing the foundation of the earth, like just kind of opening, and that just, it impacts all of like our like structures that we've built, like our civilization. So they're just showing like the maps change and all these things change, and foundations crumble. So it's more like, if we're not going to be rebuilding soil structure and tending to the soil in such an extreme and important way, it's a possible way of resolving the issue. But they're like, you got to get over your hurdles of how much it's going to cost if you really care about your civilization surviving in like flooding waters, right? Because then they're just like, otherwise it's just like underwater. Anything else? Well, let's just go right to what's the most important message we need to know about Atlantis. They're red flags from the past informing our future self. It's like your future self. They're like, your future self is like tapping you on the shoulder. I'm like, hey, you guys remember Atlantis? You remember the story of Atlantis? They're like, it's fictional until it's not. And they're like, you might be Atlantis. And they're like, Atlantis, Atlantic. And all of our beautiful architecture and all that, they're saying debris overseas, underwater, in the oceans, like it's evidence of our existence in the waters, underwater. Okay. I was kind of hoping that we would have some nice little like escapism break and like go to a faraway place and learn about Atlantis, but the reality checks of the Akashic Records, it's fictional, but it's a warning. And we are Atlantis, apparently. So that was the Akashic Records on Atlantis. I hope you learned a lot from that. And yeah, anything you want to add, or any comments or things you've been thinking about around Atlantis, leave it in the comment section below. I'd love to know what you think about what the Akashic Records said about it. And I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.